Inaugural episode officially of the Kennedy Profession. Thanks for joining me. We've got a sneak preview for people watching on the Meaning of Catholic live stream, but you're only going to get about 20 minutes this first segment. If you want the rest, you got to sign up. Go to crusadechannel.com/Kennedy, and the sign up is in the description. You're listening to the Crusade Channel, always online and always on air. Well, I'm Kennedy Hall, and I want to say thank you to Mike Church for this opportunity. He really is a good man, despite what Rick Barrett says about him when he texts me. I'm kidding. And I'm eternally grateful for this opportunity. It has been a strange road to becoming an obscure Catholic radio host, but here we are. And it's a lot of fun. I'm very excited about this new venture. And I hope that if you're watching on the Meaning of Catholic live stream, that you'll consider tuning in. If you see my background, if you're watching on that live stream, I've got the former Quebec national flag, Sacred Heart, very Canadian with the maple leaves and so forth around it. So let's get right into it. For those of you who listen to the Crusade Channel before, I'm not new completely. I've guest hosted for Mike a bunch of times. But I wanted to talk about something that's on everybody's mind for this first segment. And what is on everybody's mind? Well, of course, the nuke, the bomb that Pope Francis has put out regarding the Latin Mass. Now, in reality, if you read through the document, and we're not going to go point by point through that. Taylor Marshall did a good video on that. Dr. Kwasniewski was on the rundown doing something about that. People have talked about this ad nauseum. I'm sure that various other Catholic radio stations that are more devoted to sort of the apologetical nature have done so. If you want to read it, you can find it on the Vatican website and other places. But what is interesting to me about this is that this is simultaneously a moment of great fear for Catholics, but I think also a moment of great hope, motivation, inspiration. I think it's actually quite a positive thing. And what I mean by that is, take a look at what the document says. Again, you can read it yourself. We're not going to go over the whole thing right now. But take a look at what the document says. In essence, what's happening is that you have traditional orders, traditional priests in their traditional orders, the fraternity, the society, the Institute of Christ the King, you know the ones I'm talking about. They're relatively okay. I mean, there hasn't been any hammer come down saying that they're going to be canceled or anything like that. But the real heat seems to be coming, at least places where it's been canceled or restricted, is happening to the diocesan traditional Latin Mass communities. And perhaps if you're listening to this broadcast, you go to a traditional Latin Mass community Mass. Well, what's a TLM community? Well, a TLM community is different than a traditional order. Traditional orders are the fraternity, the society, and so forth. Traditional orders have their own parishes. Traditional orders have their own superiors and all these sorts of things. They have their own seminaries, just like any other order has always had. But these Latin Mass communities, what they are, is they're essentially holdouts from the whole indult era. In the 1980s, when Pope John Paul II said, sure, you can have your Latin Mass as long as the bishop gives permission, he can decide a time and place and so on and so forth. So some bishops have established these traditional Latin Mass communities, especially after 2007 when Summorum Pontificum came out and Pope Benedict XVI said this is all good. Every priest can say the Latin Mass. And in reality, it turned into bishops sort of allocating often, well, if the bishop was friendly, it was not a big deal at all. But if the bishop wasn't friendly, usually what you have is sort of, we're going to put the pesky TLM-minded, rigid priest somewhere. So what you have is you have these traditional Latin Mass communities where you basically have Mass every Sunday at 3 p.m. or some time that makes it difficult to actually attend Mass. Often you have what I call the rent-a-Mass situation. And what is the rent-a-Mass situation? Well, you're in a Novus Ordo styled church, table altar, no images, maybe the altar is in the middle, and you use a table altar for the Latin Mass. And again, I used to go to one of these TLM community Masses. I'm not hating on them to be cantankerous or elitist, but let's be honest. It has a rent-a-Mass feeling to it. It has, hey, we're glad that the old Mass is happening. We're glad the priest is taking his time. It's better for you. It's better for your kids. It's more traditional. It brings you more back to the traditions of the faith. But it's not a parish. And often you have these priests who, yes, they're priests of goodwill and they're doing a wonderful thing, and thanks be to God for them, but they're Novus Ordo trained. So when you go into the confessional, you hear, unless the priest has been doing his own study and really kind of done extra for himself, he's going to give you the traditional or the classic sort of run-of-the-mill confession advice. Whereas if you go to a traditional order, you hear the priest say, well, St. Alphonsus Liguori says X, Y, and Z. You come out of the confessional saying, I've just visited a physician. I had an ailment. Now I have a diagnosis and I have something to do to fix it, which is, again, possible in the Novus Ordo, but it's unlikely. So what's happening is the biggest restrictions they're actually happening to these TLM communities. That's actually a really good thing. Now, hear me out here. I'm not saying it's good if you are in a situation where your only option is a TLM community and you've got to drive 2.5, 3 hours. If that happened, that is terrible. I'm not saying that it's good in the slightest, but the reason why I'm saying overall for the church, this is something we should say thanks be to God is for, because let's look at it like this. I'm going to use an analogy here. I was talking to some friends of mine last year. They were asking me about traditional orders and so forth. And I was trying to do this, let's say, group. We had a group gathering, and then they were saying, well, how can you say that the old mass and the fraternity and the society and, all the traditional orders, how can you say that they're just better than the priests that come out of the seminary? My uncle's a priest who came out of the diocese. You can't say that they're just better because they're traditional. And I used the analogy and I said, listen, let's think about the military for just half a second here. The traditional orders are the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, the Special Forces, the French Foreign Legion, whatever analogy. There's probably military guys listening. Okay, Army, Navy, Marines. I'm just saying, broad strokes, these traditional orders, they're the most excellent. They're the most excellent offering we have. The traditional priests are trained in a way where they are objectively trained in a superior fashion to priests who are trained in the Novus Ordo paradigm. This is just the reality. And good priests like Father Altman, who were trained in the Novus Ordo, will tell you that, which is why they sort of tradify themselves through their own reading and training throughout the years where they sort of find it. And there are certain exceptions. There are certain seminaries that have adopted very traditional practices. This is true. I'm just saying this is the average. So think about the military for a second. You have your reserves. You have your infantry. You have your basic army recruits. You have men who are devoted, good men, doing their best, but they're not super soldiers. They just aren't. Now, out of these average soldiers, sometimes you do get the odd guy who does show exceptional military acumen. And perhaps they might notice him and they might encourage him to go on and do something with a more elite unit. That might happen. But usually you have a much superior level of military training and military expertise in the more elite forces. Now, it doesn't even mean that the men who join the elite forces are necessarily a Superman when they start. But by the time they end, they're a Superman when they come out. It's the same thing with sports. Anyone who wants to have their kid go NCAA or have a junior hockey tryout or something, you're going to try your best to put them with the better coaches because, objectively speaking, when you have better formation, you come out better at the thing you're trying to be good at. Well, right now you have this movement of tradition in the Catholic Church, to bring it back to the actual church. And you have many people out there who, because of Summorum Pontificum, which was a good thing overall, you have many traditionally minded Catholics who are dabbling, dipping their toe in, maybe they're knee deep, maybe waist deep in tradition, but they haven't necessarily made the full leap. They go to the Mass, and I was one of these people, and it's not a slight, okay? There are plenty of people out there who I said, TLM community is the Latin Mass they have. They've catechized their kids. They make sure they do the whole traditional thing from root to fruit, and they white knuckle it and get a lot of it done without much help from the diocese, and God bless them. But often what happens is you have people who go to the TLM communities, and they trying to pray the rosary every day. They're trying to do the whole traditional faith thing. They're reading the good books and so forth, but they have a Mass once a week. Maybe they might have feast days. But the priest who's saying Mass for them is more often than not a parish priest, and he's usually on a rotation with other priests, and it has some obscure time and some obscure location in the afternoon on a Sunday. And usually, when you go there, let's say it's downtown, you think, well, I could drive an hour and 10 minutes to go to the fraternity, but this is 10 minutes from my house. So you don't usually make that leap. I could drive an hour and 20 minutes to go to the SSPX. Or you could be even closer to the SSPX, but you're afraid of the controversy, so you don't go anyway. The point is that you're in this place where, yes, you have tradition a little bit, but you don't have it all the way through. You do have tradition a little bit, but you don't have it all the way through. Well, this is what's happened right now with what Pope Francis has done. The brunt of these restrictions is going to be felt by the TLM communities and the Novus Ordo parishes that basically do the Latin Mass here and there. These places are going to see the brunt of this. So you know what that's going to do? This is going to push traditional, curious, traditional minded Catholics of goodwill, ironically, as Pope Francis would say, to the periphery. You've got a Latin Mass community downtown in your middle America city that's got 400,000 people and it's got 200 parishioners. Guess what? 170 of those parishioners are going to start driving an hour to go to the SSPX. 170 of those parishioners are going to start driving an hour and 20 minutes to go to the oratory. Heck, they might even drive 2 hours. You're going to have now an exodus out of these traditional Latin Mass communities that are suppressed. And you're going to have those tradition-minded Catholics who are now more motivated than they were before because now they're being persecuted. And when you persecute a Christian who really believes, that's how you make great saints. This is going to backfire on the initiatives of Pope Francis. And pray for Pope Francis, pray for his conversion. This is going to backfire on Pope Francis. Ironically, what Pope Francis has done, using a military analogy again, what Pope Francis has done is essentially, he has said, you know, these pesky soldiers, if he was a military commander, these pesky soldiers, they keep holding on to these Navy SEAL ways. They keep holding on to these special forces things. I don't like it. They need to be like the rest of us, the infantry. They need to be about everyone who's in this new military way where we have CRT training and rainbow festivals and the like. So you say, you know what? We're going to get rid of this extra training stuff they do. And if they want to have it, they're going to have to go to the SEALs themselves. Well, good. Good. Pope Francis has just restricted the traditional Latin Mass access for the average Catholic that goes to a traditional Latin Mass community where it will be banned in some places. And those Catholics are going to say, you know what? I never thought how much I loved this Catholic faith, this traditional faith, until they tried to take it away from me. And I've seen this happen. I've seen this happen. Everyone knows I go to the SSPX. I know, send in your hate mail. I'm a schismatic. I'm kidding. And we used to go to the TLM community. And guess what? Coronavirus, well, the response to it basically shut it down. No communion on the tongue. That's a no-no. You see, you're not supposed to risk your body as a Christian. Oh, wait, it's the opposite. No communion on the tongue. Got to wear your mask. Only 10 people allowed. Restrictions make it hard to offer extra masses. So, sorry, the TLM, it's just going to have to wait. And it basically got to the point where we'll suppress. We had left that about a year prior to its actual suppression, but we had migrated to an actual traditional chapel. And I can tell you, it is not the same thing. And our faith has skyrocketed. And I'll give you a little quick example. We've got about 3 minutes before I got to go to break. And if you are listening on the Meaning Catholic live stream, this is just a taste. And if you want to hear the rest of what we have to say, you got to tune in on the other side of the other side of the half hour here. And the link is in the description. Sign up and hear the rest. When we first went to the Society of St. Pius X for our first full traditional Mass, this is the analogy I'm going to use. We heard a sermon that in one breath, the priest, he put together a condemnation of the errors of Lutheranism, Mohammedanism, evolutionism, Buddhism, atheism, all at once. In one combination of 2 sentences, I looked over at my wife, and we had been going to the traditional Latin Mass, but we didn't hear sermons like this because these priests were traditionally trained. The confessional was different. And I looked over at my wife, and I swear we almost wanted to get up and laugh and clap. We were giddy. It was like if you've ever had one of those gushers, you know, those with the stuff inside, those candies, and you also put pop rocks in. And it was like it exploded. I couldn't believe how incredible the wisdom was from this one priest that I heard this from. And then I started realizing that the traditionally formed priests, they are the Navy SEALs of the church. They actually take real vows of poverty. They don't sleep if they can't sleep. They drive 4 hours to say a mass wherever somebody needs it. And they still obey God over man. So if Pope Francis wants to send traditionally curious, traditionally minded Catholics, and he thinks that that's going to somehow turn the tide against tradition, well, again, you might as well say, I'm going to send all these infantrymen to hang out with the SEALs. Be careful what you wish for, Rome. Be careful what you wish for, Rome, because I think that this Latin Mass suppression of the traditional Latin Mass communities will be one of the greatest things to happen for the renewal of the church, because you just told a whole lot of angry trads, I'm going to take away your Mass and you better go hang out with those guys over there. Well, those guys over there, they're going to turn those Catholics into Christian super soldiers. So thanks be to God that Pope Francis has restricted the traditional Latin Mass communities. If you are in a situation, I'm sorry for you where that's been taken away. Now, we're going to go to break here. And if you're listening now on the Meaning of Catholic live stream, you've got to sign up. Taylor Marshall's coming on the next hour. Going to stop by and talk to us about what's going on in the church. Sign up. Links in the description. And I'll see you all soon.